Hi friends, this video is continuation to GCP interview questions. I already covered few questions in part 1 and I'm going to cover rest of the questions in the part 2. So without further delay, let us get into the topic. What are the GCP limitations? Is another frequently asked question in GCP or any other cloud interview questions. Based on the cloud which you are attending, probably they may switch this question to that, like Azure limitations or AWS limitations. So this is a very broad question. Each and every resource of the cloud has its own limitations, but I'm picking few pointers, and you can, if you know few more limitations, please write it in the comments. That will be helpful to me and to others as well. So here Google Cloud Interconnect supports only 24 providers, whereas Azure supports 102 providers. So this is more like as connecting on-premises data centers to the cloud. If you want to have a private connectivity, then you can, this cloud vendors have partnered with various carriers to have it, to build a dedicated line between your on-premises center to the cloud. There are various ways to connect, like point to site, site to site connectivities, and express route is one on the Azure for the dedicated line. Similarly, here Cloud Interconnect has a 24 providers, so you can have a look on that. The next limitation is number of services are less compared to AWS or Azure. Definitely AWS and Azure are there in the market from the long time, hence they have more features compared to GCP, but GCP is also progressing faster. GCP App Engine limited to few languages. In case if you are going with specific .NET and .NET versions, probably GCP App Engine may not be the right choice. You have to just evaluate and compare which is the best option. So this is another limitation. BigQuery performance is not that as great as Synapse. Synapse is very fast compared to BigQuery, but BigQuery has also good performance metrics. So this you can consider as another limitation compared to the other vendors. GCP documentation and community support is still not as good as AWS and Azure. If you just look at the Azure or AWS documentation, it is so heavy and you can almost find very good community support. GCP is picking on that areas. They're definitely maturing. Moving on to the next question. What are the architecture pillars or well-architected framework? This is generic question for, or I can say generic answer for all the cloud related. So these are the 6 parameters you can take. Operational excellence, security, reliability, performance, efficiency, cost optimization, sustainability. These are the 6 architectural pillars. No matter what you are answering, for which cloud you are answering, these are the architecture pillars. So operational excellence, perform operations as code, make frequent small reversible changes. So these are the few design principles or best practices you can think under the pillars. So there are plenty, you can go through them. What are the design considers? This is again, a most generic question across all the clouds. You can take few more parameters, but I have listed down which I came across. Scalability, load balance. Anytime when you're designing the architecture, these are the considerations. First, you need to design the architecture or to draw the architecture. So scalability, load balancer, monitoring, logging, security notifications, backup restore, roles, policies, services, storage, automation, high availability, disaster recovery, failover. In my other videos, I have explained about each and every parameter. You can go through in case if you have no idea what is scalability. Like you should be able to scale up or scale down based on the requirement or based on the traffic coming to your services. So you should consider always the cloud main advantage is scalability, right? You don't need to really increase your infrastructure by spending thousands of dollars in your on-premises. So whenever you need it, you will just scale it up and pay for that. And whenever you don't need, you will scale down. So load balancing. Now, in case if you have one data center and the load is coming more onto that, you can build a load balancer between 2 regions or within the same region. And there are multiple options available again. So moving on to the other one, in few interviews they ask you to design the specific architecture by giving the case, and in few interviews they directly ask you, can you please design multi-tier or n-tier cloud architecture? So this can be twisted. They can give you the case study and ask you to build for that case study, or they can also ask you as a generic like multi-tier or n-tier cloud architecture. So here you can see the top diagram shows as a general workflow and what are the different tiers available. Below one shows with the Azure resources, suitable resources for each tier. So coming to any n-tier architecture, you have a web application firewall, web tier, and you have a messaging tier in between, and then the middle tier and the data tier. So there will be a lot of, again, different services coming up in the middle to just replicate the same thing in the below one, almost replication. So first, the client facing is load balancer, but even before that, you can mention about the CDN, you can mention about your DNS as well when as internet facing. So then the load balancer comes into the picture. The load balancer actually redirect the traffic to, in case if you are maintaining demilitarized zone, then you have a different VMs there. Else you can directly redirect that to your web tier. That's up to you what kind of design you are choosing. Then from there you will have one more internal load balancer with different VMs for the business tier, or you may be using some kind of PaaS-based service there. Then one more load balancer for your databases. So this is a general multi-tier architecture you can think of, but there will be many more things we can introduce or add up to the same. Coming to the cloud native principles, these are the few principles of the cloud. So most frequently asked question again. So think about it like principle one is design for automation. Wherever it is possible, like infrastructure, CI/CD, scale up or scale down, monitoring and automation, recovery, all these phases can be automated so that it will be easy to run your scripting. For example, you're building 100 virtual machines or compute engines on the GCP, then every time writing it manually is so tough. Better you create some kind of scripting and run it, then automatically it will create all the number of copies it is required within one go. And if you want to replicate the same environment as a production or staging, it will be easy to use the same script for the other environments as well, rather than you manually create everything. Similarly, CI/CD pipelines is also part of the automation. If you want to even do a scale down and scale up, if you can write it in the script and make it part of the schedulers, then that is again a very good piece in your automation. Monitoring and automation recoveries also can be automated, and be smart with state like scale, repair, rollbacks, load balancer errors can be maintained automatically. For example, if some VM got corrected, how you can recover from that automatically, how you can automatically scale it rather than you manage manually or you write some script and keeping under the schedule. You have different options available under the cloud. Leverage that features power. Even how do you roll back, how you manage that load balancing across based on the load coming dynamically. Favor managed services. Maximum try to use managed services so that you don't need to really maintain all the security, OS level upgrades or software level upgrades. And then practice defense in depth, always be architecting. So continuous improvement and continuous architecture is always good for the cloud native application designing, because they keep on coming up with the new features, and see where you can where and when you can adapt those features. The next one is how do you approach when you have migration requirement? This is again most commonly asked question. So always remember these 4 areas like rehosting, replatforming, repurchasing, retire and retain. These are the 4 different strategies you can take to move your on-premises data centers to the cloud. Based on assessment, you can decide which one is going to be suitable. For example, rehosting is lift and shift. So you are going to replicate same kind of workloads by identifying the matching VMs or compute engines or different infrastructure required on the cloud, and then you will move all the workloads to the cloud. That is like just directly lift and shift. Whereas if you want to rewrite your application, maybe monolithic application to the microservices architecture, then you can use a refactoring. Replatforming is if you want to change your platform, maybe you are on the SQL Server and you want to move to the Azure SQL. or from one database to the other database, then you can consider as a replatforming. And repurchasing is something more comes in the SaaS models. Now you are on the Microsoft Office and you want to move to the O365, Office 365. Similarly, there are many like Dynamics AX to Dynamics 365. So those all comes under the repurchasing. So please take all these strategies. Retain is like whatever the system is already running, you're fine with that to continue without any changes. That is a retain. Retire is something like you have a very legacy system and you don't want to get into the mess by just modifying that. Rather retire it and rewrite from the scratch. Keep this handy, it will be very helpful for your interviews. Moving on, so this I just brought it to explain you will never get into the actions directly. You will first follow certain steps whenever you want to move any workload to the cloud. So this is from the Microsoft Azure, and the next slide is on the GCP. So these two slides will really help you while you are migrating, how you can transform. For example, define strategy. So first you will define your strategy. You will understand what are the motivations, what are the business outcomes and business justification, and prioritize your projects. Then you plan, then keep it ready, all the Azure setup guide, first landing zone, and expand the landing zone best practices. Then adapt your cloud migration. So again, the migration has its own steps. I explained like how do you do that discovering and all. Then an innovation, then you govern your moved workloads to the cloud, create some benchmarks to make sure that every resource is meeting that benchmarks. Manage your business commitments, operations baseline, and operations maturity. So these are the few steps that you can explain during the interview, or even you can look at this particular diagram where it explains migration to the Google Cloud, getting started, and assessing and discovering your workloads, then building your foundation and deploying workloads. And there are a lot of things you can understand from this picture as well. So this is again another question people may ask you. What are the things you usually consider while you are moving your on-premises to the cloud? So these are the few things I listed down. Again, if you have any more things, please mention that in the comments. That will be helpful to me and others as well. So servers, VMs, Hyper-Vs, VDIs, AD, or whatever the authentication mechanism you have in the on-premises, and network policies, firewalls, data, storage, backups, archival of data, applications, databases, and security. These are the few things we can consider while you are moving any workload from the on-premises to the cloud. So just to give you what are the types of assessment you usually perform. So maybe your interviewer may ask, but this is not that frequent, but very rarely people ask what are the different types of assessment you perform. For each level, like say infrastructure assessment is a different thing. Like you will consider physical, compute, storage, network hypervisors, legacy hardware, data collection, and operating environment. Similarly, there are assessment tools and analysis like IT infra discovery tools, hypervisor. So transformation assessment you perform, security and risk assessment you perform, cost and benefit assessment you perform. So each one of these can be your document to during your assessment and evaluation, and then you will later present to your customer to convince them what is that you are gonna take a path. I have a few more questions. I'll cover up in my next video. Thanks for watching my videos.